welcome to WRPB and WRPB Studios. So, I'm doing this forever. You know some of the people that I've interviewed, and addiction seemed to be something that somehow we seem to find people who are in that industry. And though for me, it's not something I've ever experienced directly. Indirectly, I had a wife who overdosed, but directly, it just wasn't something I did. But there's such a need for people to help other people, and you guys have been with me a long time, know that I'm a survivor of sexual abuse as a kid, and I'm there to help other people because I know that I can't help other people directly go through addiction and get their act together and get together. So I bring on people who have that experience. With me is Barbara Moody Holbrook. I get it right?
Yes.
And you are with RiteLife, and is there part RiteLife?
RiteLife Services.
Okay.
Mhm.
What is RiteLife Services?
So we're a 5031c,
A 50
501c.
Okay.
Yes. And so we came into fruition in 2021.
Okay.
We received a grant from the state of Florida
Oh wow.
to open up as a peer-led, peer-run agency. So what peer-run, peer-led means is that all of the people who work for me, and myself included, have addiction, some type of substance use or mental illness conditions, or we have family members who have experienced that.
Okay. So, did you get into this because you were part of the addiction world?
Yes.
Were you directly or indirectly?
So indirectly, I have a family who have had the disease of addiction and pedophilism for as back as I've been able to trace through my graduate degree.
Right.
And for myself personally, I was born into the disease of addiction. And that's the life that I led for many, many years until I was 37 years old. When I was 37 years old, I was introduced to recovery. I never knew that there was such a thing. And so I jumped on board, and of course, with the obsessive compulsive disorder, I changed my addiction from using drugs, all drugs, sex, drugs, all of it, and I changed it over to recovery.
It's interesting because being a survivor, my wife doesn't say it, she says I'm a thriver from being abused as a kid, sexually abused as a kid. And as they say, you exchange one addiction for another, and and I talked about this before, there's like 6 pieces to recovering from being abused as a child. And one of them is being promiscuous, and that was the path I had taken growing up. And it wasn't until I was 42 that I came out with the fact that I was sexually abused as a kid. And it was very cathartic for me speaking. So for someone who's in addiction, and I guess you'll be in recovery the rest of your life, is that correct?
Correct.
One of the things that I did come to terms with when it comes to addiction, alcohol, drugs especially, is it's a choice that becomes a disease. Okay, I don't think that you drove down, I don't mean you, but someone drove down Dixie Highway and saw a bunch of crack addicts and said, I aspire to be that in a week and a half. So we try it, but we don't know at that point if we have an addictive personality. Is that right?
So I can't really go into the brain or somebody's history, but I believe that those of us in recovery who really choose to look at the disease of addiction, we know where it began. And for the people that I'm aware of that are in my circle, we know that we were born to this disease. So the disease of addiction, regardless if it's drugs, which I call alcohol is a drug, sex is a drug, relationships are a drug. For those of us who have the disease of addiction, food can be a drug. Work can be a drug. So
Relationships are a nightmare.
correct.
That's totally that's a whole nother
So
story.
we won't. Yeah, that's another segment. So we, I honestly believe that, in our work. So I have 13 staff persons, and those staff persons all also fall in the lines of what we're discussing here, and they're all in recovery. And our role is to bring those people who you see outside into recovery, and what that might look for them may be different. And the great thing about us is we have the lived experience, and we don't tell people what to do. So a lot of times you have, a therapist said, well, you might need to try this. And we're saying, like, so what have you tried in the past? What have you tried in the past to not use drugs? What worked? What hasn't worked? And then we'll start from there. If you've tried treatment and you didn't work for you, let's see what might work. You don't want to go to a 12-step fellowship? Beautiful. 12-step fellowships don't always work for everybody. But let's try something else, Wellness Recovery Action Plan, and see if that will work for you, because you're the designer of your own program of recovery. And so our role is just to make sure that you're living a different life. And I can give you multiple stories of people who we have worked with. I've been in this field for a very long time, so I can give you countless stories of people who have recovered and are doing the same thing that they do every day to help others. They stay sober or stay clean. They go to meetings, they call their support system, and they do the next right thing. And so that's very basic recovery.
Mm-hmm.
However, it's working on self and then understanding who we are and what we can do to help other people.
What's interesting about what you said, which totally hits the mark, is that everybody who's helping other people within your organization have been there.
Mm-hmm.
My cousin, his son was molested, and he flies, very wealthy, flies in from New York, sits down with me, and says, well, I spent $30,000 on a psychiatrist, and he went to a psychologist. I said, did they go through it? No. Well, I can't help you as a drug addict because I have no clue. Mm-hmm. I have zero clue what's going through your mind. I'm not a therapist, but surely I sit on a crisis line for adult sexual abuse survivors, not because I'm great or a doctor, but I lived it, so I understand it better. I have an issue with people who say, hey, I can help you through it, and through anything, that have never been through it.
Right.
Okay.
So I am a master's level clinician. I do not use my credentials for my agency in any capacity. We do not have any clinical type of therapeutic interventions. We provide services on a one-on-one, and we also have groups. We use evidence-based practices that come through peer support. So there's a credential through the state of Florida that if you have a high school education and lived experience in any of these areas, that you can become a certified recovery peer specialist. RiteLife Services is a education provider. We have our provider number through Florida Certification Board. And we have specific trainings that go through educational trainings for the community for people who are looking to move into our recovery model and find a career that's not just in treatment, but as a peer specialist.
So can I get a certification as a peer specialist because of what I went through as a child being sexually abused?
So right now they do not have trauma as a basis. However, I would say that I will advocate for you through the state of Florida, Department of Children and Families, and I will also advocate through the Florida Certification Board, because that is a component. Because
without a doubt,
as we know, childhood trauma, and you look at the ACEs, and as we grow up as adults, what type of health concerns that we have, and it relates back to the untreated trauma growing up and not understanding what went on. So there are definitely trauma-informed, processes through the training. However, it's just like I'm really coming out for sexual trauma. Um, that's being recognized as part of mental illness and substance use. So, with that being a brain disease of untreated trauma and how it affects us, on the brain and then physical, I would definitely advocate legislatively for that to be involved in our curriculum.
And it's sad because that's kind of swept under the carpet, um, in my opinion.
Well, not so much anymore.
No, it's getting better, but
Yes.
still, it's very hard to find men that will talk about it. And that's my blessing, is that I am willing to talk about it.
Right.
I'm on a crisis line. I guess I'm their support system. Like, if someone was a drug addict and they're in recovery, they'll call an ex-drug addict or somebody who's in recovery already for
Yes.
support.
Yes.
I think that you're right. I think that peer support is, people might think I'm crazy, is more important than psychologist support. Someone who has never been there.
So I think it's working in tandem and it's working together. We have a board member who, and I don't know if I can put this out there or not, so I'll just be discreet. We have a person that we have connected with who has a position in one of the systems in St. Lucie, and he just called me and said, "Hey, one of the grants that we're looking at for our system includes that component for a peer support specialist to be with us. And would you be willing to be involved in that?" Absolutely, I said, because, we don't have a lot of money as it is. We don't accept insurance, and so all of our services are free. And so we would go out to overdose calls, or we go to hospitals. We have people who relapse, so we go out into the communities and provide support. So we do engagement outside of the office. When we go, our grants are paying for our gas to go, and they're paying for our time for direct service only. And so we don't charge the individual or the systems for our services. So we're involved. We collaborate throughout the 4 counties. We also collaborate with several of the survivor domestic violence and sexual, rape. And so we're heavily involved with all of those organizations, because not only do they provide support, but you never know what agency and what person in that agency is going to be able to connect with an individual,
Right.
and then be able to really support them through the process of healing.
We're getting tough of a time. How do people find you? You have a website,
So yes,
phone number?
we do. We have a website.
Which is?
You can Google RiteLife Services. On Google, RiteLife Services.
RiteLife.
Uh-huh.
All right. Okay,
Yep.
go ahead.
RiteLife Services. And if you Google RiteLife Services, you're going to come up with our website. If you go on our website, it is phenomenal. We partnered with Hanley Foundation for our website. They paid for that. Thank you, Hanley. And we have all of the information for contact, because we have an abundance of staff and a variety of services that you can connect with.
Wow. Everybody, you guys know how I feel. You know, I've never done any drugs, but I had a wife who overdosed. Okay,
sorry.
so surely I was touched by that, and I think, I hate to say this, but indirectly, there's probably not one person out there that hasn't been touched by somebody indirectly that you're close with that has an addiction of some sort. And we always kind of pigeonhole addiction into drinking and drugs, but it's not. It goes to gambling, is so much. And it's important to have places like RiteLife, because you might say, hey, I don't need them, but you know what? Your cousin's kid might need them.
Right.
There's always someone being touched. You need to use a professional. I say it all the time. If you don't use a professional, it's going to cost you 5 times more money-wise and 10 times more frustration and aggravation. I really kind of appreciate what you guys do. I think that's so important. to be out there, I sit on a crisis line for what I do, and I know the calls I get, and, some of the people got abused by family members. Most got abused by family members, actually. But one kid he couldn't believe that I spoke about my thing, and he said, my cousin gave me cocaine when I was 10, and he said if I ever spoke about it, he'd kill my family. I mean, these people need help, and they don't,
Right.
it's not internal help, it's peer help that they need,
Yes.
okay? Because people have gone through it, and if you go through it, you have a better idea how to fix it.
Yes.
I want to thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
Everybody have a great day. Check them out, Right Life, and we'll be right back.